Hey guys, what's going on? Blaine back for another Netflix review, and today I'm going to be talking about Yaksha, Ruthless Operations. Yaksha, Ruthless Operations is a Korean action film that tells the story of Han ji-hoon, an inspector for the National Intelligence Service who comes under fire at his job for mishandling a case. In an effort to redeem himself, ji-hoon accepts an assignment to inspect a Black Ops team in Shenyang, China. The group, led by kang-in, undergo a multi-layered investigation that quickly unravels, as everyone becomes involved in a spy game between agents from North Korea and Japan, all of whom are chasing the same intel as they are, so the group must do everything in their power to secure the intel. The movie does make a memorable first impression in its opening minutes with the introduction of its titular protagonist, but as it goes on, it starts to become more generic. It has its strong points with its entertainment value as an action flick, but it's disappointing compared to other South Korean films that I've seen in the past. Ji-hoon was an interesting main character. He's a smart guy who picks up on little details almost immediately, which lends well to the spy game that everyone plays in this movie. His dedication to upholding justice was something else I liked too, as it made for a good contrast between his clean, white-collar upbringing and the dirty, off-the-cuff approach of the Black Ops group. His obsession with doing the right thing eventually turns out to be a flaw of sorts, as it gets him into more trouble than he tried to resolve. This forces him to reevaluate how to tackle justice, and seeing him transform his views over the course of the story made for good character development. The other main character, Kang-in, also known by his nickname Yaksha, is pretty much the complete opposite of ji-hoon. He is not afraid to get his hands dirty in order to get the job done, and is ruthless when it comes to fulfilling his objectives. His character's history and behavior is explored in enough detail to make him more than just another thug who doesn't operate by the book. I was intrigued by the numerous professional and personal connections he had to characters in the movie. There is always something more to him going on in the background, which helped me become invested in him. The rivalry between him and ji-hoon is probably the best thing the movie has going for it. They come from completely different worlds, which creates a lot of friction between the two that makes their dynamic interesting and often amusing. Eventually, a sense of camaraderie does develop between the two, as Kang-in realizes that ji-hoon can be trusted due to his lack of a spy background, and ji-hoon becomes influenced by Kang-in's brand of justice. The two play to each other's strengths and weaknesses really well. The rest of the characters aren't all that special. The Black Ops group mostly exists to be bodyguards for Kang-in, which is fine to a point because they hold themselves up well in the action scenes, but it's still disappointing that they don't have much in the way of personality. I also thought that the villain Ozawa was bland as well. He's after the same intel as the Black Ops team, and while his motivations do make sense and he does have a shady past with Kang-in that's interesting, it's not enough to make him stand out more. Personally, I thought that his bodyguard was more memorable as a character, and he barely has any dialogue. There's lots of layers to the movie's plot, which is normal for a spy film where the characters have to solve a mystery piece by piece, but here it ends up being a mixed bag. On one hand, it's great to see the cat and mouse games being played between the Korean and Japanese characters and how they all try to outdo each other, and the setting of Shenyang adds a lot of political tension to the story. But on the other hand, it takes a little too long for the plot to start making sense once ji-hoon gets to Shenyang. There's a lot of complicated elements in the plot, with details like North Korea's Room 39, agency moles, slush funds, and a bunch of other things, and even toward the end, it doesn't come together in a completely cohesive manner. I also noticed a few scenes where characters speak multiple languages, which does make sense because multiple nationalities are involved in the plot, but the language switches often come without warning, and as someone who has a hard time differing between Korean, Mandarin, and Japanese languages, it can add further to the confusion. Now, that's not to say that the plot isn't interesting at all. There are lots of twists, revelations, and even a few betrayals here and there that I did not expect to see. Something new appears at just about every corner this movie takes, which helps keep the story fresh even if it doesn't always make sense. The movie's stylistic presentation helps out in this regard too. Plenty of scenes take place in dark, dirty city environments, which add flavor to the Black Ops mission the team undertakes, and the atmosphere is made better with colorful neon lights and heavy rain that further add to the dark mood. Most of this movie's entertainment value comes from the action scenes, which vary between melee combat and gunfights, and I found myself enjoying the former more than the latter. The brawls are choreographed well, making good use of props and judo techniques, and there's a variety of the sequences featured. By comparison, the gunfights are okay, but a bit underwhelming. Unlike the brawls, there's nothing unique about how they're presented. No fancy parkour, no particle effects, and it's pretty much the same encounter each time, where the Black Ops team run and shoot enemies, and the team never takes a bullet themselves. All of this adds up to a movie that I felt dragged on longer than it needed to, and this isn't helped by the large amounts of exposition dished out by characters. Some of this exposition and the relationship of of the two leads is compelling enough to watch to the end, and there is an interesting plot point that pops up at a little under halfway through the movie. But most of it still proceeds in fairly predictable fashion. It was easy to tell if a character was going to die or not, characters have an annoying habit of holding people at gunpoint and not firing the gun, and it builds to an ending that proved more anticlimactic than anything else. The amount of cliches don't necessarily hurt the movie as a whole, but they don't help it either. Overall, Yaksha Ruthless Operations is an average action movie that does its job well enough, but could have been a lot better than it turned out to be. If you like action movies, especially those that feature spies as the main characters, and you don't mind wading through tons of political exposition to understand the story, I think you might enjoy watching this. It has some fun moments with its action scenes and the relationship of the two main characters, but the overly complex and formulaic story and lack of other interesting characters make for an ultimately mediocre experience. What did you think about this movie? Did you have a blast with the amount of action in it, or did you find the story too confusing to follow along with? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways guys, that's going to wrap up my review of Yaksha Ruthless Operations. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always stay tuned for the next part, where next time I review the Spanish drama, Dancing on Glass. Bye bye!